Rain hammered the great glass dome of the palace, each drop a fist against the crystal. 1,000 candles trembled. 1,000 nobles held their breath. In the center of the marble floor, Elowen Vale knelt in a dress the color of pale ash and tried to remember how to breathe. She heard his boots. King Kaelen Thorne walked toward her the way winter walks into a garden. Slow, inevitable, killing everything it touched. He did not meet her eyes. Elowen Vale, you stand accused of wearing a rank you did not earn. His gloved hand closed around the silver sigil at her throat. He tore it free. The chain snapped. The sigil spun on the marble and rolled into the dark. She rose, she ran. Lightning split the sky, and a voice silent for 6 years began, at last to rise. Which country are you listening from? Please comment below. I'd love to know how far this story reaches. 6 hours before the storm, Elowen Vale was polishing silver that no one would ever use. The east wing woke slowly in winter. The sun rose behind a veil of gray cloud, and the corridors filled with pale, colorless light that flattened every shadow and every face. Elowen moved through that light the way she moved through most mornings, quietly, carefully, as if afraid her footsteps might leave marks on the stone. Her room was the smallest in the east wing, tucked between the servant's stair and the old linen closet. The ceiling sloped, a single iron bed, a single wooden chair, a wash basin chipped at the rim. A ward of the crown, they called her, though no one in the crown remembered her name. She had lived in that room for 11 years, and no one had ever come to see her in it. She dressed in the dark, the ceremony gown hung from a peg, pale ash silk, plain at the collar, plain at the sleeves. She touched the fabric and felt her stomach turn. Tonight she would be seen. Tonight, for the first time in her life, a king would look at her. The thought did not comfort her. It frightened her so much that she pressed her palm flat against the wall until the cold steadied her. She walked to the kitchens before the cooks were up. She took her bread from the same shelf she had taken it from since she was 8 years old. A scullery maid hurried past with linens and did not see her. A page boy ran shouting for the butler and did not see her. A noblewoman's lapdog padded in from the gardens, shook rain from its coat, looked directly at her, and even the dog, after a moment, moved on. This was her life, to be walked past, to be stepped around, to be the silence between other people's sentences. She slipped into the great hall while the servants were laying the tables for the ceremony feast. No one asked what she was doing there. She took a cloth and began polishing the silver, because polishing silver was what she had always done when she did not know where to put her hands. As she worked, she listened. 2 footmen were gossiping by the door, their voices low and easy. 20 Omegas on the list this year. 21, they added. The Vale girl. The Vale girl. She has no house. The king's mother insisted. Some old duty to her line. Pity, really. She will stand there with her knees shaking and the court will laugh. She will not last the first glance. They laughed softly. They did not see her. They moved on. Elowen looked down at the silver platter in her hands. Her reflection stared back from the polished metal. A small, pale face, gray eyes, dark hair pulled into a plain knot. A face that had practiced, since childhood, the art of being nothing. She set the platter down. She walked. The corridors of the east wing were colder than the rest of the palace. At the end of the longest corridor, she pushed open a heavy wooden door and stepped into the smell of hay and horse and rain. Oren was there. He was always there. The old stable hand was hunched beside the chestnut mare, brushing her flank with slow, careful strokes. His back was crooked, his hands knotted, his gray hair tied with a strip of leather once red. He did not turn when she came in, but he spoke. "You are up early, little sparrow." She sat on the overturned pail by the stall door. It was the only seat in the palace that had ever felt like hers. "It is the ceremony tonight," she said. Her voice was barely a whisper. "I know. They will call me. I know." She pulled her knees to her chest. The mare turned her great soft head and breathed warm air against Elowen's hair. "Oren, I am afraid." He stopped brushing. He turned. His eyes were the color of river stones, and they were the only eyes in the palace that had ever looked at her as if she were real. "I know that too. What if he sees nothing in me?" "Child, he will see what he is willing to see. That is all any king ever does." She pressed her forehead against her knees. "I want to run. I want to be a girl in a field somewhere, with no name and no rank and no dress laid out for me on a peg. I know." Why can I not? He knelt slowly until his face was level with hers. His hand, rough and warm, cupped her cheek. Because you were not born to run. You were born to be heard. And tonight, whether the court listens or not, the sky will. She stared at him. Oren, what do you mean? He only smiled. He pressed something into her palm and closed her fingers over it. She opened her hand. A small silver charm shaped like a cloud, worn soft at the edges. The chain broken and tied with a twist of wire. She had never seen it before, and yet the moment it touched her skin, something deep beneath her ribs shifted, the way a sleeping animal turns in its den. Oren, where did you... But the old man was humming now under his breath, brushing the mare as if he had not just handed her something her body remembered. Outside, thunder rolled low across the palace rooftops. The sky was waking up. Elowen tucked the charm against her throat, where the Omega sigil would later sit. She did not know yet, could not know yet, that by nightfall, the sigil would be torn from her neck, and the charm would be the only thing left. The gardens of the palace were quietest at dawn. Elowen slipped out through the servants' door near the kitchens, her slippers damp from the dew, her shawl pulled tight against the cold. The rain had thinned to a soft gray drizzle, the kind that did not fall so much as hang in the air, clinging to every leaf until the whole world seemed to be underwater. She walked with her head down. She always walked with her head down. The palace gardens were not truly gardens anymore. In the old queen's time, they had been famous roses from the southern coast, hedges trimmed into stags and wolves. Now the hedges had grown shaggy, the statues were missing their hands, and no one came here, which was why Elowen did. She followed the gravel path past the broken fountain, past the sundial with its rusted arrow, to the sunken rose garden, half drowned in ivy, tucked behind a crumbling wall where no window could see. There was a single rose there that still bloomed. Out of season, out of reason, an old red rose on a gnarled stem, its petals half curled. Every morning for 3 years, Elowen had come here, and every morning the rose had been dying, and every morning the rose had still been alive. She did not know why she came. She only knew that when she sat beside the rose, her chest did not feel so tight. This morning the rose was almost gone. She knelt. Her ash silk ceremony dress pooled around her on the wet stone. She reached out and touched the dying rose, and her heart broke a little, the way it always did when something alive was on the edge of stopping. Please, she whispered. Please, not today. The rose did not answer. She closed her eyes. She had never known what she was doing. She only knew that since she was very small, when something she loved was in pain, something in her wanted to sing. Not words, not music. Just a sound low, warm, more like a hum, a sound her mother used to make when she was rocking Elowen to sleep. It lived behind her ribs. Most days she pressed it down until it went still. Today, she let it rise. The hum came out of her so softly she barely heard it herself. 3 notes, 4. A slow melody with no beginning and no end, a melody that seemed to come from the rain rather than from her. And the rose opened. She felt it before she saw it. A warmth under her hand, a small living unfurling. She opened her eyes. The petals were unfurling, one by one, red, soft, impossibly alive. The gnarled stem straightened, the leaves brightened, the rose bloomed fully as if it were the first morning of spring. Elowen stopped breathing. At her feet, the mist was moving. It was not blowing, there was no wind. It was coiling slowly, deliberately, curling around her ankles, like a cat winding around its keeper. She could feel it brushing her skin warm where the air was cold. The mist knew her. A gust of wind stirred the ivy. The wind had a direction, and the direction was toward her. It lifted a loose strand of her hair. It waited as if for her next breath. She clamped her hand over her mouth. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She scrambled back from the rose, back from the mist, back from the wind. Her mother's voice rose up in her, sharp and clear. Do not sing for them, my love. Do not let them hear you. She had not sung. She had only hummed. 3 notes, 4, the smallest thread of a song, and the world had answered. She pressed her back against the wall. She stared at the rose still blooming, still impossible, and she felt her eyes fill with tears she could not understand. Fear, yes, but beneath the fear something else, something like recognition, something like a door she had kept locked her whole life, creaking open just far enough for her to see the light on the other side. "No," she whispered. "No, I cannot. Not today, not any day." She pushed herself up and turned to run. She almost collided with Oren. He was standing at the edge of the sunken garden, leaning on his cane, the drizzle silvering his gray hair. He had not made a sound. He was only standing there watching her, with an expression she had never seen on his face before. Not surprise, not pity, something quieter, something older. She stopped, her breath caught. "Oren, I did not mean to." "I know." His voice was very gentle. "The rose was dying. I know." She stared at him. The tears ran down her face now without permission. "You saw. I have been watching you in this garden for 3 years, child. I knew long before today." She could not speak. Oren crossed the wet stones slowly, his cane tapping. He stopped in front of her. He reached up and touched the little silver cloud charm at her throat. "This belonged to your mother." The world tilted. You knew my mother?" "I loved your mother, not the way a man loves a woman, the way a man loves a sister. She was kind to me when I had no one. She gave me this charm the night before she was taken, and she said if the girl ever comes to the palace, keep her safe, keep her quiet, keep her hidden, until the day she is ready." Elowen's knees went weak. "Oren, what am I?" He looked at her for a long moment. The drizzle fell between them, behind her. The impossible rose bloomed on. "You are what she was, and what her mother was, and what her mother's mother was, and it is a thing the world has tried to kill for 200 years, child, and it is a thing the world will not be able to kill in you, not if I have any say. I do not understand. You will not tonight. Tonight you will stand in that hall and you will kneel and you will be brave. But one day, not long from now, the sky will ask you a question, and when it does, you will not be afraid of the answer." Her tears came faster. "Oren, I'm so tired of being afraid." "I know, little sparrow." His smile reached his eyes this time. "That is how I know your time is near." Above them, the clouds shifted. A single break opened in the gray, and a thin shaft of pale gold light fell across the garden, across the bloomed rose, across the coiling mist, across the small silver charm at her throat, and then it closed again, as softly as it had come. Elowen stood very still. She did not know it yet, but somewhere in the high towers, a king was pulling on his ceremonial gloves, and somewhere in the council chamber, a lord was whispering her name to men who would do her harm. And somewhere inside her, a door she had kept locked her whole life had just creaked open. By nightfall, it would be flung wide. The memory came for her on the way back to the palace. She was walking up the servants' stair, one slow step after another, when the smell of rain on old stone caught her. And then she was 10 years old again, and she was not in the palace at all. She was in the little cottage at the edge of the village of Ashmere, where she had been born. The cottage had 3 rooms, a kitchen with a stone hearth, a sleeping room with 2 straw mattresses, a small room at the back where her mother kept her herbs and her drying bundles, and the long blue shawl she wore when she went out to sing the rain. The walls had been whitewashed every spring. Elowen had loved the creak of that door more than any sound in the world. Her mother's name had been Elowen Vale, tall, thin, with hair the color of wet bark and eyes like river stones. She had hummed while she worked. She had hummed while she cooked. She had hummed while she braided Elowen's hair in the mornings, and the little ribbons had always matched the color of the sky that day. Blue ribbons for a blue morning, gray for gray. Once, only once, a red ribbon on the morning the soldiers came. The drought had lasted 2 years. Elowen remembered the cracked earth of the fields more clearly than she remembered her own face, the thin ribs of the cattle, the way the well had gone dry in midsummer, her own tongue dry and heavy as leather, and her mother's hand on her forehead steady. "Hush, my love, the sky will remember us. I will remind it." She had sung that night. Elowen remembered it as if it were happening in front of her. Her mother at the edge of the dry field, her blue shawl wrapped tight, her mother tilting her face up to the hard, bright stars. Her mother opening her mouth and letting a sound come out that Elowen had never heard before. Not a song with words, not a tune anyone could name, but a long, rising, shimmering note that seemed to come from the earth itself. The sky had listened. The first cloud had come low and gray out of the south. Then another. By the time Mirren's song ended, the whole sky had been full of them, heavy and soft and ready. And then the rain had come. Not a storm, a blessing. Mirren had come home soaked to the bone, laughing, lifting Elowen into her arms. Did you see, my love? Did you see? The sky remembered. The sky always remembers if someone remembers to ask. 3 days later, the soldiers came. Elowen remembered the knock. 3 knocks, loud, evenly spaced. Her mother had gone very still at the hearth. She had turned to Elowen, and for the first time in Elowen's life, her mother's eyes had been afraid. Into the cupboard, my love. Quickly, quiet as a breath. Do not come out. Do not make a sound, no matter what you hear. Elowen had climbed into the cupboard. It smelled of lavender and cedar. Her mother had closed the door. There was a thin vertical crack, and through that crack Elowen had watched. The soldiers came in, 4 of them. Tall, armored. One wore the silver wolf of the king's house. He was the one who spoke. Elowen Vale, you are charged with the crime of unsanctioned weather song, of drawing rain without the blessing of the crown, of carrying the blood of a line the old law has named forbidden. Mirren had not run. Mirren had not wept. Mirren had only stood very straight at her own hearth, and she had said, in a voice as clear as a bell, "The rain fell on every field, my lord. Not only mine. Tell your king the sky does not recognize the borders of his crown." They had taken her. They had bound her wrists. They had wrapped her in her own blue shawl as if in mockery. And as they passed the cupboard, as they passed the place where Elowen was crouched with both hands pressed over her own mouth, Mirren had done something very small. She had paused. Just for a breath. Just for the space of a single heartbeat. She had turned her head toward the cupboard. And through the crack, Elowen had seen her mother's face one last time, and her mother had pressed one finger very lightly to her own lips. Do not sing for them, my love. Do not let them hear you. She had not said it aloud. She had not needed to. Elowen had heard it with her whole body. Mirren had begun to hum as they led her away. The same low, shimmering hum. It had carried on the wind all the way down the muddy road, past the bend, and then it had stopped. Just stopped, mid-note. 10-year-old Elowen had stayed in the cupboard for the rest of the night and the whole of the next day because her mother had told her not to come out, and Elowen had always done what her mother said. The villagers had found her the following evening. An old couple had taken her in for a week. Then a letter had come from the palace, from a woman she had never met who called herself the king's mother. The child is a ward of the crown. Send her to the east wing. She will be cared for. She will not be spoken of. She had not been spoken of. Not once. Not in 11 years. Now, climbing the servant's stair in her damp ash silk dress, with the silver cloud charm warm against her throat, Elowen Vale stopped on the 7th step and pressed her forehead against the cold stone wall. And she heard his voice. Not in memory, in the present. Echoing down the stair from the great hall above, deep, low, unmistakable, the voice of a man used to being obeyed by rooms and by armies and by storms. King Kaelen Thorne had arrived. She knew that voice. She had known it her whole life. She had heard it in her nightmares for 11 years, though she had never met the man it belonged to. It was the voice that had signed the order. It was the voice that had sent the soldiers. It was the voice that had closed around her mother's name the way an iron cuff closes around a wrist. Her knees buckled. She caught herself on the banister. Above her, the voice laughed at something, a short, polite king's laugh. Then the boots moved on. The landing went quiet. Elowen stood there a long time, shaking. Then she lifted her head. She straightened her shawl. She touched the silver cloud charm at her throat, and she felt deep under her ribs the sleeping thing turn over once in its den. She climbed the rest of the stairs. She went to her small room. She closed the door. She sat on the edge of the iron bed and looked at the ash silk dress laid out beside her. She thought very quietly, with a calm that frightened her more than any fear. Tonight, I will stand in a hall in front of the man who killed my mother, and I will kneel to him, and I will let him place his hands upon me. She thought, Mother? Mother, I am so sorry I have been quiet for 11 years. She thought, I do not know if I can be quiet for one more night. Outside her narrow window, far above the palace towers, the clouds were beginning to gather. Slowly, patiently, the way a crowd gathers when it has heard that something terrible is about to happen, and it does not want to miss it. Elowen Vale closed her eyes, and she stepped forward toward the dress, and toward the hall, and toward the voice, and toward the moment. Only hours away now, when a king would tear the sigil from her throat, and the sky would begin, at long last, to answer her back. She did not remember running down the palace steps. She did not remember crossing the long colonnade, nor the marble courtyard, nor the great bronze gate that the guards had flung open without daring to look at her face. She only remembered the rain, sudden, hard, cold as iron, and the way the wind caught her torn collar and dragged her forward out into the wild dark. Her slippers came apart at the first cobbled street. She kept running. The ash silk dress clung to her legs, heavy with water. Her hair slipped free of its knot and streamed behind her like a black banner. She ran down the wide ceremonial avenue, past the shuttered windows, past the startled faces of late travelers who crossed themselves and stepped back. She did not see them. She saw only the distant silhouette of the cliff above the Capitol, and she ran toward it the way a drowning thing runs toward air. Lightning split the sky above her. The thunder came half a breath later. So close she felt it in her teeth. She ran faster. The streets sloped upward. The cobbles turned to gravel. The gravel turned to a narrow dirt path threading up between the tall black pines. Her feet bled. She did not feel them. Inside her chest, something was tearing away old cloth tears when it can no longer hold its own weight, and she knew with terrible clarity that if she stopped running before it finished, she would break into pieces. She reached the cliff at the edge of midnight. The path ended. The trees fell away. Before her stretched a long gray shoulder of stone, jutting out over the Capitol, open to the whole black bowl of the sky. Below her, the city glittered through the rain, 1,000 windows, the great dome of the palace glowing at its center. Everything she had ever known, everything that had just unmade her. She walked to the edge. The wind rose up to meet her. It pushed her hair back. It pressed the wet silk against her body. It howled in her ears, and for the first time in her life, she understood the howl. It was not noise. It was a question. The wind had been asking her something for a very long time, and she had been pretending not to hear. She lifted her face to the rain. She saw her mother. She saw the cupboard. She saw the finger pressed to the lips. She saw 11 years of silence. She saw the king's gloved hand. She saw the silver sigil spinning on the marble. She saw the court laughing. And something in her, the tired, patient thing that had held it all together, let go. The scream came out of her. It did not sound like a scream. It sounded like a hymn. It rose from somewhere beneath her ribs, beneath her bones, beneath 11 silent years, and it poured out of her throat with a force that bent the pines behind her. It was every word she had never been allowed to say. It was the name of her mother. It was the name of the village. It was the name of the girl who had been taught, for her whole life, that the safest thing she could be was nothing. The sky answered. Lightning forked down the length of the horizon, so bright it turned the night white. Thunder rolled through the cliffs and shook the stones under her feet. The clouds above her began to turn slowly at first, then faster, a great dark wheel pivoting around the point where she stood, as if the whole storm had finally found its center. The rain came down in sheets. Far below in the Capitol, she saw the river swell. She saw it overtop its banks. She saw the thin silver thread become a wide black tongue, licking up the lower streets, pulling down market stalls, torches guttered out, lanterns spun into the dark. I am sorry, she thought, with the small part of her that was still thinking. I did not know I could do this. Her voice broke. The hymn snapped off mid-note. Her knees struck the wet stone. She caught herself on her palms. The storm did not stop. The storm had learned the song now. The storm was singing it without her. She crouched there on the cliff, soaked through, shaking, her black hair plastered to her face. Far below, she heard the distant bells of the Capitol begin to ring the low, urgent toll that meant flood. She heard it, and she understood, and the understanding was a second blade inside her chest. Mother, she thought. Mother, what have I done? She pushed herself up. She could not stay. She could not walk down into a city she had just drowned. She turned away from the cliff, into the pines. The storm came with her. The rain bent around her shoulders as she moved. The wind cleared a path through the wet branches ahead of her, as if something very old had decided to take her home. She did not look back. Behind her, on the cliff's edge, she left 2 small bloody footprints and a single torn piece of ash silk caught on a bramble, fluttering in a wind that now obeyed a girl walking into the dark. Far below, in the palace, a young scholar was running. His name was Tioran, 23 years old, thin, ink-stained, the youngest archivist in the royal library. He had woken to the flood bells and run to his books. He stood now in the deepest vault of the archive, a single lantern trembling in his hand, its light skittering across rows of leather spines. He had pulled one book from the shelf, a thin book, a forbidden book. A book the old law had ordered burned 200 years ago, and which some long-dead archivist had hidden behind a false panel. The Cloudwalkers of the Vale, the cover said in faded silver script. His hand was shaking so badly he could hardly turn the page. He had heard. The whole palace had heard. The king had stripped an Omega of her rank. The girl had run, the storm had come, and the name the steward had whispered, Elowen Vale, had hit Tioren like a hammer, because he had seen that name. In a long list of silvered ink, the very last name at the very bottom. He reached the page, his lips moved as he read. The ink glowed faintly in the dark. The final name, Vale, of the last line, daughter of rain and quiet. Tioren closed the book. He pressed it to his chest. He looked up at the low stone ceiling, as if he could see through it to a cliff above the capital, where a girl in a ruined dress had just screamed the sky awake. "Oh no," he whispered. "Oh gods, she is a Cloudwalker." Above him, the bells went on ringing, and in a corridor far above, the boots of a king were pacing back and forth and back again as word reached him, for the first time, that the girl he had cast out had not been seen since she vanished into the rain. Kaelen Thorne had not slept. He stood on the high battlements of the palace, his bare hands gripping the cold stone, and he watched the river eat his city. The rain fell sideways now. It had been falling for 7 hours without pause. Below him, the lower quarters of the capital were already gone. The tanner's lane, the fish market, the old bridge where he had once ridden at 12 years old behind his father's horse. The water moved through the streets in long, black, unhurried tongues, and where it passed, lanterns went out one by one. He had given every order a king could give. The gates were open, the granaries had been emptied. The upper terraces were thrown wide to refugees. He knew already that it would not be enough. "How many?" he said. His voice did not sound like his own. 17 confirmed, my king, General Vasca answered carefully. The count will rise with the water. The water will keep rising. My king, the rain cannot last forever. This storm is not weather, Vasca. Do not insult me. It was Lord Halvin who stepped forward, Halvin, in fine gray wool, his face a careful mask. Halvin who had whispered at his elbow 4 days ago. Halvin who had murmured, "Your mother would have torn the sigil herself, my king. My king, we must not leap to superstition. The rains of this coast have always been. Do not say the word girl on this wall again. Halvin, I will not hear it from your mouth." Halvin closed his mouth. A door banged open behind them. A young man stumbled onto the battlement, thin, drenched, ink-stained, a heavy book clutched to his chest. "My king, forgive me. Who are you?" "Tioren, my king, archivist, royal library. I have found." "Speak." The boy dropped to one knee and set the book down with the care of a man laying a sleeping infant. "The Cloudwalkers of the Vale." Something cold moved under Kaelen's ribs. "Open it." Tioren turned the pages with trembling fingers. He lifted the book. "The old bloodline, my king. Omega line of the Northern Valley. Sky speakers, voices who could ask the rain to come and the rain to stop. They were not witches, my king. 200 years ago, the law was rewritten. The line was called forbidden. They were hunted. They were executed," Kaelen said. He did not know how he knew it. "Yes, my king, by royal order. Signed by my grandfather. And his father before him." Kaelen stared at the long silvered list. At the bottom, Vale of the last line, daughter of rain and quiet. "There was a woman," he said slowly. 11 years ago, taken from a village named Ashmere. She had sung rain over a drought. I was a boy, I did not sign the order. My mother signed it. I remember the day the letter was sent for her child." "Yes, my king." The child was given to the palace as a ward, placed in the east wing, told not to be spoken of. "Yes, my king." The child was Elowen Vale. "Yes, my king." Kaelen closed his eyes. "I stripped the daughter of the last Cloudwalker," he thought, in front of the court that hunted her line to extinction. "And then I let her walk out alone into the rain." He opened his eyes. "Halvin." "My king, you told me at the ceremony that my mother would have torn the sigil herself." "My king, I only meant—" "You will be silent now, Halvin, for the rest of this night. If you speak again before I give you leave, I will have you removed from this wall." Halvin nodded, once. His face did not move, but his eyes in the torchlight had gone very still. The way the eyes of a careful animal go still when they have just understood that the ground beneath them has changed. Kaelen knelt. It was a small thing, and it was an enormous thing. A king did not kneel on his own battlement in front of his own council, but Kaelen Thorne knelt on the wet stone, and he pressed his hand flat against the open page, and he did not lift his head for a long moment. When he lifted it, his face had changed. Not softer, harder, but a different hardness. The raw, cracked stone of a man who had just understood he had been wrong about everything that mattered. "Oren," he said. A small voice near the door answered, "Here, my king." The old stable hand had come up the battlement stair without anyone noticing. His gray hair was soaked flat against his skull. In his knotted hand he held something small and silver, a little chain, broken, ending in a tiny silver cloud. The charm, her mother's charm. It had been on Elowen's throat at the ceremony. Kaelen remembered now how it had fallen to the marble beside the torn sigil. How Oren, the old stable hand no one at court ever looked at, must have stepped forward when no one was watching and picked the little silver cloud out of the dust. "I knew her mother, my king. I promised her I would keep the girl safe. I have failed tonight, but I have come to tell you what you must already know. She will not come back on her own. She has been afraid for 11 years. If you want her back, my king, you will have to go and find her yourself." Kaelen rose slowly. "General Vasca, my king. 20 riders, light packs, no banners, my own horse. The black mare, the one with the soft mouth. We ride in an hour. My king, in this weather. I tore the sigil from her throat in front of my entire court. Do not tell me about the weather. The weather is my doing. An hour, my king." Kaelen took the small silver cloud charm from Oren's palm. He closed his fist around it. It was lighter than he had imagined, and it was somehow very warm at the center. At the stairhead, he paused. "Kurin, my king, you will come with me. You will bring the book. If she asks who told her the truth, I will not have her told by a lord. I will have her told by the boy who was brave enough to bring it up into the rain." "Yes, my king." Kaelen went down the stair 2 steps at a time, the silver cloud hot in his closed fist, his long black cloak streaming behind him like a banner of his own ruin. Behind him, Halvin stood very still and watched him go. The mask was still in place, but his fingers laced before him had closed just a little too tight. The rain fell. The bells rang. The river rose. And somewhere beyond the cliffs above the capital, a girl in a ruined ash silk dress was walking into the northern pines, and a king was about to ride after her. She did not know what day it was. The storm had swallowed time. There was only rain, and the sound of rain, and the wet black trunks of the pines sliding past her as she walked. Her feet had stopped bleeding. She thought perhaps they had gone numb. The ash silk dress was heavy as armor on her, and the charm at her throat was the only warm thing in the world. Elowen Vale walked. She did not know where. She only knew that the storm went where she went, and the wind parted the branches before her, as if something ancient were holding an invisible cloak over her head. By the second night, she was so tired she could not cry anymore. She sat down against the roots of a great pine and pulled her knees to her chest. Far away, through the trees, she could hear a sound that was not the storm, a low, steady rhythm. Hoofbeats, many of them, moving carefully over wet ground. She closed her eyes. She did not run. She did not have any running left in her. Let them come, she thought. They came. She heard him dismount before she saw him, the creak of leather, the soft apology of boots on wet moss, the sound of a man telling his men, in a low voice, to stay back, to let him go on alone, then the long quiet of a man walking through a wet wood toward a woman he has wronged. She opened her eyes. Kaelen Thorne stood at the edge of the small hollow. He was alone. He wore only a plain black travel coat soaked through. He carried no sword. His hair was wet and pushed back from his face. The torchlight from the path behind him caught his eyes, and for the first time in her life she saw that they were not the eyes of the voice in her nightmares. They were gray. They were tired. They were afraid. He stopped. He did not come closer. "Elowen." She did not answer. "May I approach?" She did not answer. He did not move. The rain fell between them. He was waiting. It was the first thing about him she had not expected that he would wait. At last, she lifted her chin. You called me unworthy. Her voice was thin. It had been torn on the cliff, but it carried. I did. In front of your court. In front of my court. You tore the sigil from my throat. I did. You did not look at me when you did it. A pause. No, I did not. Then do not look at me now. He lowered his eyes at once. She had not meant it as a command. She had not known she could give commands, but the rain softened where his gaze dropped, as if the storm had been waiting to hear her tell a king where to put his eyes. I have come, he said, to the wet ground between them, to tell you what I should have known before I ever stood in that hall. I know now who your mother was. I know now what you are. I know now what my house has done to your house. For 200 years, I'm not here to ask you to forgive it. You should not. I am here because the capital is drowning, and because no one in my kingdom has the right to ask you to stop it, and because I'm going to ask you anyway. Drowning. Yes, the lower streets are gone. The old market, the tanner's lane, the river is still rising. The rain has not stopped since you left the palace. She closed her eyes. I did not mean to. I know. I did not know I could. I know. Her voice broke. She pressed her hand over her mouth. He took one step, only one. Then he stopped, because she had lifted her other hand only a little, only as high as her shoulder, and it was enough. Do not come closer. I will not. He reached instead into the inside of his coat. He drew something out and held it up in the rain so that she could see it, a small, worn, silver cloud on a broken chain, the chain now mended with a clean new wire. Her breath caught. I picked it up, he said. After you ran, I have been carrying it in my closed hand for 2 days and 2 nights, and I did not set it down even to sleep. That is my mother's. Yes. Give it to me. He hesitated. Then carefully he bent and set the charm down on a flat gray stone at the halfway point between them. He straightened. He stepped back. Come and take it when you wish. She did not move. She did not trust her legs. My mother, she was not a witch. No. She sang the rain for a village that was dying of thirst. Yes. Your house killed her for it. My mother signed the order. I did not know. I was a boy. I swear it to you on no crown and no God, because I have no right to swear on either of them to you. I only swear it on my own life, and my life is a very poor thing at this moment. She looked at him a long time. You are not asking me to forgive you. No. You are not even asking me to come back. No. Then what are you asking? He lifted his head. The rain ran down his face. His gray eyes met hers. I am asking you to let me ride beside you, wherever you're going, and to let me be the first thing in your path that does not flinch from your voice. You do not owe me your gift. You do not owe my city a single breath. If you walk past the capital and let the river take it, I will have earned that. I am asking only that you do not walk into the dark alone. Something moved in the trees behind him. It was a child, a thin gray shape, a boy. Perhaps 9 came stumbling out of the pines, soaked through, barefoot, clutching something to his chest. Behind him, his mother. Behind her, a line of 20, 30 refugees. The people of the lower city, fleeing the water, cutting through the northern forest because the main road was under. The boy saw Elowen first. He stopped. He did not know who she was. Please, please, lady, my sister cannot swim. My sister is still in the house. The water. His mother caught him and pulled him against her. She looked at Elowen. She looked at the king. She did not know who either of them was. She was too tired to know. Forgive us, lady. We are only trying to get the children to higher ground. Elowen looked at the boy. She looked at the mother. She looked down at the silver cloud charm waiting on the flat gray stone. Something inside her, the 11 years silent thing, stood up for the first time in its life. It did not ask permission. It asked the sky. Slowly, Elowen Vale pushed herself up from the roots of the pine. She crossed the small hollow, step by careful step, and she bent and picked up the silver cloud from the stone, and she closed it in her fist. She did not look at Kaelen as she passed him. She looked at the boy. Where is your village? Down the valley, lady. Below the falls. The water is at the rooftops by now. Show me. The boy's mother began to cry. Elowen turned her head, a fraction, toward the king. You will follow, You will not lead. You will not speak unless I speak first. If you come closer than 10 paces, I will send you back to your horse. Do you understand? I understand. Then come. She stepped past him into the wet dark. The storm stepped with her. The boy and his mother stumbled after, then the line of refugees, and last of all, at 10 exact paces, came the king. They walked down into the valley, and below them, through the black trees, Elowen could hear it at last, the low, hungry swallowing sound of a village drowning in the dark. They came down through the black pines as the first gray light began to bleed into the sky. The valley opened beneath them the way a wound opens wide, dark, pooling. Where there had been a village 3 days ago, there was now a sheet of moving water. Roofs broke the surface like the backs of drowning animals. A broken church steeple jutted sideways, its bell still swinging with a slow, hollow underwater toll. A single candle burned in an upper window of what had been the miller's house, and Elowen understood with a small, sharp pain in her chest that someone was still alive in there. She stopped at the edge of the water. Behind her, the line of refugees stopped too. The boy's mother sank to her knees on the wet grass and pressed her face into her child's hair. The king stayed at 10 paces. He said nothing. Elowen looked at the drowned village. She did not feel powerful. She felt small. She felt 10 years old again, watching her mother walk into range she had called on purpose. She felt the silver charm hot in her palm. She felt for the first time in her life that the choice was hers. She opened her hand. She lifted the charm to her throat. The broken chain had been mended with new wire by the king's own hand. She fastened it at her nape. The small silver cloud settled against her collarbone, where her mother's hand had once rested when she combed her hair. Then she walked out onto the water. She did not think about it. She only stepped. Her torn slipper met the flooded grass, and the flooded grass held her. Her next step met what should have been deep water over the drowned road, and the water rose firm beneath her, as if it had been told that this foot was not for drowning. Behind her, someone gasped. She did not look back. She walked across the flooded village. She did not run. She did not hurry. She set one careful bleeding foot in front of the other, and where she walked, the water settled. It did not part for her. It quieted. The long, dark tongues of current slowed and smoothed until the surface around her was a long, pale mirror holding the gray dawn and her own reflection. She began to hum. 4 notes. Not the scream of the cliff. A lullaby. The same lullaby her mother had hummed at the hearth in Ashmere, when the stew was simmering and the rain was coming down, gentle outside the window, and the world had been for 1 hour of one evening. Safe. The rain softened. The sheets of falling water thinned into a fine drifting mist. The broken bell in the drowned steeple swung one last time and hung still. She reached the miller's house. She laid her palm, very lightly, against the wet stone of the upper window. She hummed. The water that had risen to the sill began, inch by inch, to lower itself down the wall. The window opened. An old woman's face appeared, streaked with tears and soot. She reached through the opening and pulled up a small, soaked, white-faced child, a girl no older than 5. Her arms locked around a stuffed cloth rabbit, her lips blue with cold. Elowen held up her arms. The grandmother lowered the child down. Elowen took the little girl against her chest. The child did not cry. The child only pressed her wet face into the hollow of Elowen's throat against the silver cloud and went very still. There, Elowen whispered. There, you are safe now. The sky is listening. Behind her, from the far bank, she heard a sound she had never heard before in her life. She turned her head. The line of refugees had knelt, all of them, 20 strangers on the wet grass, their foreheads pressed to the earth, and behind them at 10 paces, the king had gone to one knee as well. His head was bowed, his bare hand was pressed flat against the wet ground. She did not know what to do with that. She carried the child back across the water. She knelt by the kneeling mother and placed the small wet girl into the woman's arms, and it was only then, as the mother realized this was not her own child, that Elowen understood. This is not the girl her boy was crying for. The boy had said, "My sister." She turned. She looked back at the drowned village. There were other houses, other windows, other candles burning in upper rooms the water had not yet reached. She walked back out onto the water. She did this for 3 hours. She did not know it was 3 hours. She knew only the weight of small bodies against her chest and the sound of her own voice, humming, 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 4 notes and 4 notes and 4 notes, until the inside of her throat felt scraped raw and her knees would not hold her anymore. She brought out the miller's grandchild. She brought out 2 brothers. She brought out a woman with a newborn wrapped in a flour sack. She brought out a dog. She brought out, at the end, a boy of about 9 who looked very much like the boy on the bank, and whose eyes, when he saw his brother across the water, filled with tears too large for his small face. By the time she carried him to shore, the rain over the village had stopped. A narrow shaft of pale morning gold fell through the thinning clouds and lay across the water like a path laid down for a queen. Elowen set the boy down in his brother's arms. She took 1 step back, her knees buckled. She did not fall. A hand caught her elbow, gentle, steady, covered in a plain black glove. She was too tired to pull away. She let herself be held upright for 1 breath. 2, she closed her eyes. Your king, Kaelen said softly, close to her ear, has not earned the right to carry you. But if you will lean, I will be a wall. Only that. Only a wall. She leaned. Her forehead tipped forward and met the wet wool of his coat, and she felt his arm come up behind her shoulders slow, the way a man reaches for something that might shatter if he breathes wrong, and hold her there. Not closer, not tighter, only enough. She could feel, against her skin, the rapid hammer of his heart under his coat. She had expected a king's heart to sound different from other hearts. It did not. I am so tired. I know. I think I'm going to faint. I will catch you. If I do not wake up, you will wake up, Elowen Vale. The sky is not finished with you, and neither am I. She opened her eyes just for a moment. Over his shoulder, across the flooded valley, the shaft of pale gold light was still lying on the water. A single white seabird, impossibly far from the sea, wheeled down through the thinning cloud and skimmed the surface with its wingtip, and lifted again and was gone. Something inside her, something she had no name for, recognized the bird, recognized the light, recognized, for the first time in her life, the feeling of a thing the old stories called the bond. It was not loud. It was only a small, low, warm hum under her ribs, as if a second heart had just begun beating in time with the one she had been carrying alone for 11 years. And the second heart was not her own. She looked up into his face. His gray eyes were very close. They were a man's eyes now, tired and wrecked, and held open by the effort of not looking away. He felt it too. She saw the small, sharp, involuntary catch of his breath. She saw his hand tighten only a fraction against her shoulder blade. She closed her eyes. Do not. I will not. Not yet. Not yet. The dark came up for her. She fell finally into the arms of the king she had spent her whole life afraid of. And as the wet wool of his coat closed around her, the last thing she heard over the quiet water and the kneeling people was his voice close to her hair, so low that only she and the sky could hear. I will be a wall, my lady, only a wall, for as long as you need one. She slept for 19 hours. He knew because he counted them. The inn at the head of the valley had 2 rooms above its tap room. The innkeeper, a stout woman who had taken one look at the soaked king on her doorstep and not curtsied, had given Elowen the smaller one, the one with the whitewashed walls and the iron bed and the narrow window. The one, Kaelen thought bitterly, that looked very much like the room she had lived in for 11 years in his own palace. He had carried her up the narrow wooden stair, laid her on the bed, and stepped back so the innkeeper could strip the ruined ash silk from her shoulders. He had not stayed in the room. He had no right. He had gone down to the tap room and sat by the fire and pulled off his own soaked boots and laid his signet ring on the table and looked at it for a long time. The ring was heavy, black iron, set with a single polished gray stone. It had been his father's. It had been his grandfather's. It had been, he understood now, the ring whose seal had sat at the bottom of the order that took Mirren Vale out of her cottage in the rain. He slid it off his finger. He set it on the scarred wood and pushed it away with 2 fingers. He did not pick it up again. Then he laid his forearms on the table and put his forehead down on them. And for the first time since the night of the ceremony, he allowed himself a single silent breath that was almost a sob. He slept like that for an hour. By the second nightfall, he could not bear it anymore. He climbed the narrow stair. He stood outside her door a long minute with his hand raised. Then very quietly, he pushed it open. The room was warm. The innkeeper had braided Elowen's hair loosely over one shoulder while she slept. She lay on her side, her face turned toward the window. In the firelight, she looked younger than she had on the cliff. She looked, he thought, with a pain that surprised him, like the child she must have been in the cupboard. He did not go to the bed. He pulled the one wooden chair from the corner to the hearth, turned it to face the fire, and sat. He did not look at her. He spoke to the flames. I do not know if you can hear me. I do not know if it matters that you hear me, but I have sat with myself for 2 days now, and I am a coward, and I would rather say it while you sleep than while you look at me. The fire popped. My mother was a hard woman. She believed that a king who was loved was a king who was weak. When I was 9, she brought me into the council chamber to watch her sign a death order. The woman on the order was named Elowen Vale. I was told she was a witch. I was told she had used a forbidden song. I believed it because I was 9 and because I loved my mother. He rubbed his hands slowly in front of the fire. A year later, a letter came. The witch had left a child. My mother read the letter aloud and said, the child will be a ward. She will not be spoken of, not by the court, not by my son. And I understood even at 10 that if I spoke of the girl, I would be disobeying my mother, so I did not. And then after a while I forgot to. And then after a while I forgot that she existed at all. He closed his eyes until 3 nights ago. The fire hissed. Halvin came to me 4 days ago. He said the court was whispering that I was a soft king. He said your mother would have torn the sigil herself, and I tore it, not because I believed him, because I heard my mother's voice behind his, and I was 9 years old again, and I did not want to be weak in front of her, even though she has been dead for 6 years. He bent forward and put his head in his hands. I'm not asking you to forgive me, Elowen. I will say it again, every day for the rest of my life until you're tired of hearing it, but I wanted you to know once, spoken aloud in a room where you're sleeping safe. What was in my head when I did what I did? It was not anything you did. It was something broken in me that had been broken for a very long time. He sat a long time with his head in his hands. Behind him, on the bed, the blanket stirred. I heard you. His breath stopped. He did not turn. How long? He said to the fire. From hard woman. Forgive me. Do not ask me that tonight. I thought you were sleeping. I know you did. That is why I let you speak. He closed his eyes. He heard the soft creak of the iron bed. Kaelen Thorne. He had not known. She knew his full name. Of course she knew his full name. Every child in his kingdom did. Yes. Look at me. He turned. She was sitting up against the pillow, the blanket pulled to her collarbone, her black hair in a loose fire-lit braid. Her face was pale and thin. The silver cloud was still at her throat. I do not forgive you, she said. I know. I may never forgive you. I know. But I heard you, and I will remember that you said it while I was sleeping, and I will remember that you took the ring off before you said it. You saw that? The innkeeper told me. He almost laughed. It came out very small, of course she did. She was quiet a moment. I would like a bath and a coat. Mine is ruined and a horse. He went very still. Where are you going? To the capital. Elowen, I'm going back, because there are still people in the lower city, and the river has not fully settled, and I would like to see for myself the streets I drowned. I am not going with you, I'm going ahead of you. You will follow behind at 10 paces, as you did in the forest, and you will not speak to me on the road unless I speak to you first, and when we reach the gates I will enter alone. He bowed his head. Yes, my lady. Do not call me that, not yet. Yes. She was quiet a long moment, then softer. But you may ride in the same direction. You may ride on the same road. That is all I'm giving you tonight. Do you understand the size of that gift? He understood. He rose. He crossed to the door. At the threshold, he paused, his hand on the frame, not looking back. Elowen. Yes. Thank you. He left her to the firelight and the silver cloud at her throat. And as he closed the door behind him, he heard so quietly he thought he might have imagined it. The soft, four-note hum of a lullaby, rising from the bed, settling into the beams of the inn, easing every tired child in every room below into the first true sleep they had known in 4 long nights. They rode for 6 days. The road from the valley to the capital was not long, but Elowen would not be hurried, and Kaelen, understanding at last that the hurrying of her was itself a kind of harm, let the days unspool the way she set them. They rose with a light. They stopped when her hands began to tremble on the reins. They slept in 3 different wayside inns and 1 widow's barn, and in each place the innkeeper looked at the torn ash silk hemmed, now with plain brown homespun, looked at the small silver cloud at her throat, looked at the king who rode 10 paces behind her without his signet, and said nothing. On the first morning she rode in silence. The storm had truly ended. The sky above them was the pale washed blue of a thing that has cried itself out. Elowen looked up at it sometimes as they rode. Each time she felt the small warm hum beneath her ribs, the second heart, and each time she looked down again quickly. At the ford of the Blackwater, they came upon a family. The cart was tipped. The father had misjudged the current. A child was screaming. The mother was in the water up to her waist. Elowen reined in. Before she could open her mouth, Kaelen was past her. He dismounted at a run, walked straight into the Blackwater in his boots and all, reached the horse in 4 long strides, had the buckles undone in 20 seconds, and walked the panicked animal out of the current with one hand on its cheek strap and the other on its withers. He spoke low and steady, and the horse, which had been ready to kill in its fear, came out of the water like a lamb. Then he went back for the cart. Elowen, from the bank, did something she had not planned to do. She took a small, slow breath. She hummed 4 notes, and the current slowed by a hand's breadth. It was enough. The axle came free. Afterward, the father tried to kiss the king's boot. Kaelen would not let him. "Thank your lady, not me?" He stepped back. He did not look at Elowen as he passed her, because he understood that public gratitude would undo her. She did not speak to him that night. But at the inn, when the serving girl set down a plate of brown bread in front of her, Elowen lifted her eyes across the taproom to where Kaelen sat alone, and she held his gaze for 1 full breath, and she dipped her chin once, a fraction. He saw it. He bent his head over his book and did not lift it for a long time, because his eyes had filled. On the second morning she spoke to him. It was a small thing. A cloud had drifted in front of the rising sun. She turned her head, without thinking, and said aloud, "That one is called a ship's keel, because of the shape." He did not answer for a long moment. Then, "And the long, thin ones? The ones that braid? Those are rain horses. My mother said they were the sky practicing how to gallop. And the great piled white ones? The ones that look like cathedrals? Those are thrones," she said. "Every cloud throne has an old queen sleeping inside it." He was quiet. "Your mother was a better teacher than mine." "Yes." "Did she teach you all of them?" "She taught me 9. I have learned the rest by watching." "How many do you know now?" 62. "Will you teach me?" She did not answer at once. Then, without turning her head, "Perhaps on a day when I am less tired." He did not press. On the 3rd morning she asked him a question. "When you were 9 in the council chamber, when your mother signed the order, did you know the woman's name?" His hands tightened on the reins. "No, I was told only the witch." "Did you ask her name?" "No." "Why?" A long pause. "Because I was afraid that if she had a name, I would not be able to watch my mother sign it." Elowen rode on. She did not speak again that day. But that evening, when Oren sat by the fire at the widow's barn, she went and sat beside him, and she leaned her head against the old stable hand's shoulder the way she had leaned against it at 7 years old on an overturned pail. "Oren, tell me my mother's name again." "Mirren." "Say it again." "Mirren Vale, your mother. Of the village of Ashmere, who sang the rain for a drought, who loved her daughter, who would be proud of you. Little sparrow." She closed her eyes and pressed her forehead into his shoulder. Across the barn, Kaelen sat alone near the door with a cup of cold tea, and he did not move, and he did not look away. He had understood by now that bearing witness was the only thing he was allowed to give her. On the 4th night, it was he who hummed. It was an accident. He was brushing down his mare outside the stable door, alone, under the last of the evening light, and a song came into his head, a song his own nurse had sung to him before his mother had dismissed her for being too soft, and he hummed it, quietly, without noticing. From the doorway of the barn, Elowen stopped. "That song, forgive me." "No, that song, where did you learn it?" "From my nurse. My mother dismissed her when I was 4. Elowen set the water bucket down. "My mother sang that song. It belonged to one village in one valley, and that valley was Ashmere. My nurse was from the north." They looked at each other across the wet yard. The last of the sun was on his hair. The first of the stars were coming up behind her shoulder. "Perhaps my nurse knew your mother," he said carefully. "Perhaps she held me and sang her song, and put me to sleep with a lullaby written by the people my house would later kill. Perhaps." He closed his eyes. When he opened them, she was watching him with something that was not forgiveness and was not softness, but was at last recognition. Recognition that the man in front of her had not been born cruel. That tangled things could sometimes be unbraided, if there was time, and if there was patience, and if there was a second heart humming quietly under the ribs of both of them. She bent. She picked up the bucket. She walked past him into the stable, and as she passed, her shoulder for only the smallest fraction of a moment brushed his arm. It was not an embrace. It was a sentence spoken in a language that had no words. He stood in the yard a long time after she had gone in. On the 6th morning, they came over the last rise. The capital lay below them in the dawn. The river had settled. The great dome of the palace caught the first sun. A thin ribbon of bells rang from the high towers, the long peal that meant the king returns, and below it, fainter, a second peal Elowen had never heard in her life. "What is that bell?" Kaelen drew up beside her. "That is the old bell of the South Tower. It has not been rung in 200 years. "What does it mean?" "It means a Cloudwalker has entered the city." "Who ordered it rung?" "I did not." She looked at him. The second heart hummed under her ribs. She understood that whatever had changed between them on the road was about to be tested by whatever was waiting for them behind the great bronze gate. They rode down toward the city. At the gate itself, drawn up in a long gray line, stood the high council of the kingdom, 12 men in gray wool, their faces arranged into careful masks of welcome, and at the center, slightly forward, stood Lord Halvin, and he was smiling. His smile did not reach his eyes. "Kaelen, they are not here to welcome me. No, they are not. They are here to put me back in a box. Yes, ride beside me, not behind beside. Yes, my lady. Do not call me that yet. Yes." She urged her mare forward. He urged his beside her. The great council chamber had been built to humble kings. The ceiling rose into shadow 3 stories above. The long black table stretched the length of the room, carved from a single piece of ironwood so old that its grain had turned almost to stone. 12 high-backed chairs stood along its sides. One chair stood taller than the rest at the head, and at the far end stood a single 13th chair, small, plain, without arms. The petitioner's seat, the chair where anyone who came before the council was meant to sit, small below them, looking up. Lord Halvin had already arranged it. He stood at the head of the long table, his hands folded neatly, his gray wool immaculate, his mouth arranged into the careful, respectful, slightly sorrowful shape of a man about to deliver bad news for someone else's good. "Lady Vale, please sit." He gestured to the petitioner's chair. Elowen stopped in the doorway. She was still in travel clothes, a plain brown wool coat, borrowed from the widow at the barn. Her hair was braided back. The silver cloud charm was at her throat. She did not look like a lady. She looked like a girl who had ridden 6 days through wet country. She did not sit. She walked the length of the long black table. She walked past the council. She walked past Halvin, whose small, tight smile flickered at the corner of his mouth. She walked all the way to the king's chair at the head of the table. She did not sit in it. She turned. She set both her hands on the high back of it, and she faced the 12 men. "I will stand for what you have to say to me." Halvin's smile tightened. "My lady, and you will sit. All of you, a council hears its cases seated. Please, sit." A shocked silence. Then, because the request was, by their own law, correct, 11 of the 12 slowly pulled out their chairs and sat. Halvin hesitated. Halvin looked past Elowen to the doorway behind her, where Kaelen had just entered. The king had not dressed for court. Black travel coat, no signet, beside him, Tiorin clutching the book, Orin in the doorway, leaning on his cane. Kaelen walked to the long side of the table and took the first chair on Elowen's right, 1 seat down from the head. He folded his hands on the ironwood. "Sit, my lord. My lady is waiting." Halvin sat. "Lady Vale," he began, in his oiled voice, "we are honored by your return. We have heard with wonder of what you accomplished in the valley. Lives were saved, water was turned, the kingdom owes you a debt. Thank you. And yet, we must be truthful. The gift you carry is not a small thing. Our laws were not written to hold it. Our ceremonies were not built to honor it. You, my lady, are standing in the middle of a kingdom that does not know. At this moment, whether you're a blessing or a danger, it is our duty to answer that question before the weather above our capital answers it for us." She listened. "Go on." "There is an old rite, the ritual of the sky. It was the rite by which the ancient kings confirmed their Cloudwalkers, a sanctification, a moment in which the sky and the court and the crown all agree on what this gift is. It has not been performed in 2 centuries. A ritual of the sky, correctly performed under the guidance of this council, would be a formality, an honor. It would give you, my lady, a sanctioned voice." A sanctioned voice. Something cold moved down her spine. She had been a girl with an unsanctioned voice for her whole life. She had just begun to imagine what an unsanctioned voice could do when it stopped apologizing. And here was Halvan very politely proposing that she kneel in public before a rite the council controlled. How many Cloudwalkers survived the ritual in the old records? A small silence. "My lady." "How many, Lord Halvan?" "The records are fragmentary." "Turin, you have read the book. How many?" Turin's voice cracked. "Of 23 recorded rites, my lady, 9 survived, 14 did not." The chamber went very still. 14 out of 23, more than half. "Yes, my lady." She turned her head slowly to Halvan. "My lord, you have just offered me with great ceremony a ritual that has killed more than half of the women it has been performed upon. You have offered it in the same oiled, regretful voice you used to persuade a king to tear the sigil from my throat 1 week ago. Do you imagine? I do not remember the voice." Halvan's face did not move, but a single small muscle at the corner of his jaw tightened, and Elowen saw it, and Kaelen saw it too. "My lady, the weather above our kingdom is not a matter of personal pain. It is a matter of state. You have in your grief already drowned a city. The people kneel to you in the streets. Do you understand what unsanctioned power celebrated in public does to a throne, to a council? It frightens you. It destabilizes the kingdom. It frightens you. Say the word. Say it aloud in this chamber. You who arranged so carefully for a king to be frightened of softness 1 week ago. Say what a voice like mine does to a man like you." Halvan did not say it. Kaelen spoke into the silence, very quiet, the quietest she had ever heard him. "I will not sign the rite, Halvan." Halvan turned his head. "My king. I will not sign it. I will not seal it. I will not allow it to be drafted under my house's name." The crown stripped her rank. The crown will not now propose a rite with a 60% mortality as the means of giving it back. Do I need to say it a 3rd time, Lord Halvan? Halvan's face at last moved, only for a breath. But the careful mask cracked, and behind it, Elowen saw naked for the first time the cold, precise, calculating rage of a man who had built his life on being the voice in a king's ear, and who had just felt the king's ear close. The mask rebuilt itself. Halvan bowed his head. "Of course, my king." And then he turned his head just a fraction toward Elowen. "My lady, please, I hope you understand that nothing I have said was meant as harm. I will withdraw the proposal for the present. We will speak of it at a later hour, when emotions have cooled." "No." Every head turned. "We will not speak of it at a later hour, my lord. We will not speak of it at all. You will not raise this right again in private. You will not raise it in council. You will not raise it in whisper, in corridor, in letter, or in the ear of any priest within this palace. Do I have your word, my lady?" "Your word, Lord Halvan." A long silence. "You have my word." She looked at him. She saw the lies sitting behind his eyes, the way a stone sits at the bottom of a still pond. "Good. Then we are finished here." She let go of the back of the king's chair. She walked the length of the long table. She walked past Halvan without looking at him. At the iron-bound doors, she paused. "King Thorne." "My lady." "Walk with me." He rose, and as she stepped out into the high torchlit corridor with Kaelen 2 paces behind, the small warm hum under her ribs turned, quietly, into a low and steady warning, and she understood, with a certainty that chilled her more than any storm, that the lie in Halvan's eyes would be acted upon before the next dawn. She did not sleep that night. They had given her the old queen's chambers in the north wing, 3 tall rooms with painted beams and a fire already lit, and a great carved bed under a canopy of blue silk. She had walked the length of them and chosen, in the end, the the smallest a sitting room with a narrow hearth and a low divan. She had curled there in her borrowed brown wool, with the silver cloud at her throat, and she had not undressed. She knew. She did not know how. She only knew the way she had known on the cliff, that the sky was listening. She knew the way her mother had known at the cottage in Ashmere, the moment the soldiers turned down the muddy road. The second heart beneath her ribs had been humming a low, steady, two-note warning since she had walked out of the council chamber. She did not call for a guard. She did not send for Kaelen. She sat on the divan with her back to the hearth and her eyes on the door, and she waited. The palace settled into its night. The fire burned low. The wind outside the narrow window rose and fell, and rose again, and she let it, because she understood now that the wind was hers. At the hour when the torches in the corridor had burned down to blue stubs, she heard the door. It did not open. It was opened, the latch lifted too carefully. The hinges did not give their usual small creak, because a cloth had been pressed against them. A soft step onto the tapestry in the outer room. A second step, a pause, a man's breath. She did not move. He came through the inner doorway. A slim man, unremarkable, in dark clothes, no livery, in his right hand, low against his thigh, he carried a thin-bladed knife. He walked into the little sitting room with the calm of a man who had done this before. He saw her on the divan. He stopped. She saw the small flicker of confusion in his eyes. He had been told the Cloudwalker would be asleep. He recovered. He lifted the knife. Elowen Vale breathed in. She did not scream. She did not sing. She only drew one long, slow breath into her lungs all the way in. The way she had drawn breath once before on a cliff above the capital, and this time, instead of letting the storm out through her mouth, she let the cold out through her skin. The air in the room changed. It did not blow. It simply turned in the space of one heartbeat, from the warm, close air of a fire-lit chamber into the thin, biting air of a high mountain at midnight. Frost flowered across the stone of the hearth. The water in the wash basin clouded and glassed over with ice. A single long breath of white fog rolled out of her open mouth, and the assassin, 3 paces from her, staggered. His knife arm locked. His lips went blue. He took one more step and his knee buckled, and he dropped to the rug at her feet. The thin-bladed knife fell from his hand and rang once on the stone. He did not die. She did not let him die. She pulled the breath back slowly into her body, and the cold receded. The assassin lay at her feet, breathing shallowly. She looked down at him. She noticed distantly, perfectly steady. She leaned forward. She picked up the knife. She turned it in her hand. On the guard, worked into the silver in a pattern most eyes would have missed, was a tiny crest, a bird, a folded wing, the crest of House Halvan. She stood. She crossed the little room. She pulled the great corridor door wide. Guards, 2 came at once. Their faces went pale when they saw her standing in a nightgown of frost-edged brown wool, with the last of the cold still rolling off her shoulders in thin white curls. A man is on the floor of my chamber. He is alive. He will not stay alive if he is not seen by a physician. Call the king. Do not call the council. Go. One ran, the other stayed, sword drawn. Kaelen came at a run. He was in his shirt sleeves, his hair was unbound. He reached her chamber 3 minutes after she had spoken the word king, and she understood from the speed of him that he had been sitting in his own rooms listening to the same 2-note warning under his own ribs. He stopped in the doorway and looked at the man on the rug. He looked at the knife in her hand. He looked at her face. He crossed the room in 3 long strides and stopped 2 paces from her, never closer than she allowed, and he set his hand, palm up, in the air between them. She laid the thin-bladed knife across his open palm. His fingers closed around it. He turned it. He saw the small crest at the guard. For the first time since she had known him, she saw the expression of a man who had in one breath passed from grief into war. Halvan. Yes. Elowen, Later. I do not want your apology tonight. I want a trial. I want it public. I want it called in the great hall at dawn, and I want every member of the council present, and I want the full court summoned to witness. Can you do that? Yes. Then do it. He did not move at once. He was looking at her. You are shaking, Elowen. She looked down at her hands. She was shaking. She had not noticed. I did not know I could do that. The cold. I meant only to call for help. I breathed in and... Sit down. No. Sit down, please. just for a breath. She let him lead her, with one hand at her elbow, the first time he had touched her since the flooded bank, to the low divan. He knelt not above her, on one knee on the rug in front of her, so that his face was below hers. You did not kill him. You could have. You did not. No. Every Cloudwalker before you killed the first person who came for her life. Everyone. Your mother did not have the chance. You did not. Do you understand what you have just done? I made it worse. You made it unanswerable. She closed her eyes. Dawn, she said. Dawn. I will speak, Kaelen, not you. I will speak in the great hall. I will name him, and I will name the right he tried to push me toward, and I will name what was in his hand tonight. I will not be spoken for. You will not be spoken for. And I will make the announcement. He went still. What announcement? I will undergo the ritual of the sky. Elowen, in 3 days, in public, in the open square, not because he asked it, because I have chosen it. I will choose the place. I will choose the hour. I will choose the priest. If I live through it, I will speak. If I die, then the sky will answer in my place. And Halvin will have to live with what the sky has to say to him. Either way, the decision is mine. Not his, not yours, mine. 14 out of 23. Elowen, do not do this. I cannot lose you. She looked at him for a long moment. You already did a week ago. In front of your court. I have come back of my own will since, and I have walked beside you on a road, and I have learned the shape of your voice in a barnyard at dusk. But you lost me once, King Thorne, and I will not let a man like Halvin lose me a second time, because a king could not bear to watch me choose my own ground. A long silence. He bowed his head. Yes, my lady. And Kaelen, if I die on that platform, I will burn the council chair that was sitting beneath Halvin when he proposed the right, and I will bury its ashes at the foot of your mother's name in the archive. That is the only promise I will make you tonight. If the sky takes you, it will not take you without my keeping something of yours safe from him forever. She did not answer. She could not, her throat had closed. She only reached out at last and laid her hand, the hand holding her mother's silver cloud, which had fallen from her throat in the struggle against the side of his lowered face. For one breath. For two, she felt him close his eyes. She felt the small, wet warmth of a single tear run under her wrist. She did not take it back. Dawn, she said. Dawn. She drew her hand away, and somewhere above the capital, the clouds began quietly to gather. The night before the ritual, the capital did not sleep. From her balcony, Elowen could see them, the small gold lights of 1,000 windows, burning far past the usual hours. The old stable hands in the lower city had lit a line of candles along the river wall. The widow at the barn 3 nights ride away had. She heard later, walked out into her yard at sundown and put a single lamp on her gatepost. She stood at the balcony rail in a long dark robe and listened. The air was cold and clean. The storm had not gathered over the city again. She had not let it. For 3 days since the announcement in the great hall, she had held the weather above the capital in her own hands, not tightly, not with force, only with attention. The clouds above the palace were thin and high and peaceful. Tomorrow she might die. She did not feel afraid. That was the strangest thing. She had expected the old trembling in her hands, the old closing of her throat, the old 11-year silence rising up and sealing her mouth. Instead, what she felt was something like the quiet of a room after a long argument. A tired quiet, a decided quiet. Behind her, a soft knock. Come in, Kaelen? The door opened. She heard his boots, then the small creak of the balcony door, and then the quiet of him stopping at the rail 2 paces to her right. I did not know if you would want company. I did not know either. I can go. Do not go. He stayed. For a long time, neither spoke. Somewhere in the city, a child was singing, a real child, not a hymn, a small ordinary song. She smiled faintly into the dark. They light candles for you, Elowen. Along the river wall, on doorsteps, the household guard rode back from the West Bridge an hour ago and said there is a line of lamps 2 miles long. I did not ask them to. I know. She rested her hands on the cold stone. Kaelen, I want to ask you a thing, and I do not want the answer you think a king should give. I want the answer a man gives. Ask it. If I die on that platform tomorrow, what will you do? A long silence. I will finish Halvin publicly. Within the law, under your name, that comes first. So I say it first. That is not what I meant. I know after, I will ride to Ashmere. I will find the cottage where your mother lived. If it is still standing, I will kneel on its threshold and ask her forgiveness for what my house did. I will do this alone. No guard, no herald, no crown. And after that, I will come back and I will open the east wing. Every room, I will sit on the floor of the room that was yours until I have understood the shape of a girl's 11 years of silence. And then I will begin to pass the laws you wanted to pass. The silence law, the restoration of the Cloudwalker archives, the pardons, I will pass them under your name. Elowen Vale, not mine. And I will not take another wife, and I will not take another consort, and I will rule a kingdom that knows, every morning when its bells ring, that the queen it did not crown is the reason its streets are dry. She was quiet. That is a great deal for a man to carry. It is less than you have carried for 11 years. She did not answer. What are you most afraid of? He asked after a moment. If you will tell me, I have never asked you. She thought about it. Being silent again, not being dead. I have been close to dead many times. In a quiet way. It does not frighten me. What frightens me is surviving tomorrow and finding out that the ritual has taken my voice, that I will stand on that platform and open my mouth and nothing will come out, that the sky will keep the gift and hand me back the girl who polished silver. May I speak? Yes. I will not promise you that the sky will not take the gift. I cannot promise you anything about the sky, but I will promise you this. You will never be silent again, even if you come down off that platform and never call a rain again, because there is now a man in this palace who will sit on the floor outside your room for the rest of his life, if that is what it takes, until you tell him the smallest thing what you want for your breakfast, what color ribbon you wore when you were 6. You will never be silent again, because I have learned, too late, but I have learned how to listen. She did not answer at once. She lifted her hand slowly from the rail. She laid it on top of his. It was the first time she had touched him since the night she had laid her palm on the side of his face. She did not take his hand. She only rested her hand on his, palm down, fingers spread, and she felt the small shock of warmth run up her wrist and into her chest and down to the hum of the second heart beneath her ribs, and she felt his heart leap under her palm. He did not turn his hand over to catch hers. He understood by now that she would tell him when she dared. Kaelen. Yes. After the ritual, whether I'm a queen or a girl, whether I have a voice or none. Yes. I would like to see Ashmere. His hand beneath hers turned only a little. His palm opened. He did not close his fingers. He only laid his palm flat against hers, skin to skin, and waited. Yes, whenever you will go, I will take you. Not as a king, not as a guard, as the man who kneels on a threshold. She closed her fingers at last, around his. She did not look at him when she did it. She looked out, instead, over the capital at the line of candles along the river wall, and she let the small, warm hum of the second heart move. At last, out of her chest, and into the bones of her hand, and into the bones of his. It was not a kiss. It was not a vow. It was not even forgiveness. It was a hand. It was the holding of one. They stood there a long time. At last she said, "Go. You have to sleep tonight. I do not. I'm going to stay out here until the last candle in the city goes out, and then I'm going to walk down to the platform with my head up. I would like Kaelen to know while I'm walking, that you are walking behind me, not with your hand on my elbow, only behind at 10 paces, until I call you closer. Until you call me closer." He raised her hand. He did not kiss her knuckles. He had not earned that. He only bent his forehead for one breath against the back of her hand, and he straightened and he let her go. "Good night, Elowen Vale." "Good night, Kaelen Thorne." He went. She stood at the rail alone. The last candle in the lower city did not go out for many hours. The dawn, when it came in red, a thin line of red along the eastern hills, as if the sky itself had not slept either, and had been holding its breath. She lifted her face to it, and somewhere deep under her ribs, the second heart and her own heart, and the small silver cloud at her throat all began, very quietly, to beat in time. The platform had been built in the great square below the palace. It rose 3 stories above the cobblestones, a great circle of pale stone raised on timber scaffolding, ringed by 12 tall pillars carved with the old wind signs no one in the kingdom had read in 200 years. The top was open to the sky. At its center lay a plain stone disc, inlaid with a silver spiral. No throne, no altar, only the disc and the circle and the wind. Elowen walked to it alone. She had refused a carriage. She had walked out of the palace gate in a long white shift, barefoot, her black hair loose down her back, the small silver cloud charm at her throat. The guards had fallen back. Kaelen walked 10 paces behind her, his own cloak of office folded over his arm not worn, carried as a man carries a thing he has not yet earned the right to put down. The streets were lined with people. They did not cheer. They did something stranger. As she passed each block, the people in it knelt not in supplication, but the way one kneels at the passing of a bier or a bride. They were very quiet. They held candles, though the sun had long been up. An old woman touched the hem of her white shift, and Elowen, without stopping, laid her hand on the woman's gray hair for one breath and moved on. She climbed the steps of the platform, 33 of them. The stones were cold under her bare feet. The wind freshened as she climbed. By the time she reached the top, the wind was moving her hair back in a long black banner. At the center of the disc, the high priest waited, an old man she had chosen from the northern temples, because she would not have a priest of the capital. "My lady, priest, you are certain. I am certain. Then we begin." He raised his hands. He called the ritual in the old tongue. His words fell into the silence like stones into a still pond. Elowen understood none of them, and understood all of them. She stepped onto the silver spiral. She felt it hum faintly beneath her arches, as if a buried string had just been touched. Below, at the foot of the platform, she saw them. Kaelen in plain black, Oren leaning on his cane, Teorin clutching the book, and at a careful 5 paces back, in a cluster of gray wool, stood the 12 men of the High Council. At their center, smiling his careful, regretful smile, stood Lord Halvin. He had been arrested, in name, 3 days ago. He had been released on his honor to attend the ritual in public witness. Kaelen had argued against it. Elowen had overruled. She had wanted him to see. She lifted her eyes from him. She lifted her eyes to the sky. She began to sing. Not the lullaby, not the 4-note hum, not the scream of the cliff, something between them. A long, low, rising hymn with words she did not remember learning, but that came out of her mouth as if they had been waiting in her chest for 11 years old northern words. The words her mother had hummed at the hearth but had never sung aloud. The wind rose to meet them. The clouds above the square, which had been thin and high and peaceful, began to turn. Not darkly, lightly. They pulled into a great slow wheel above the platform, pale and luminous, their undersides catching the midday sun and throwing it back down as a soft falling brightness, as if the heavens had decided for 1 hour to pour themselves out, not as water, but as light. Elowen sang. The light poured down in long, slow falling ribbons, silver and pale gold, and where it touched her white shift, the fabric seemed to become part of the sky itself. Her hair lifted, her bare feet rose, a hand's breadth above the silver spiral. She did not know she was rising. She knew only the song, and the wind and the small warm hum of the second heart beating in time with her own beneath her ribs. Below, in the gray wool knot, Halvin moved. It was small, it was precise. He gestured once, with 2 fingers of his left hand, to a man standing at the base of the scaffolding. The man was dressed as a priest's attendant. He stepped forward with a small iron brazier of coals, and from the pouch at his belt, he drew out a pinch of dark powder, and he cast it onto the coals at the foot of the nearest pillar, the one carved with the sign for silence. A thin line of black smoke rose from the brazier. Elowen, on the disc above, felt the wrongness before she saw it, a discordant note, a second hum beneath her own, not the warm second heart, but something cold, something that wanted to slide in between her breasts and choke the song off at the root. She turned her head a fraction, and she saw the black line of smoke, and she saw the false attendant, and beyond him in the gray wool, the small, careful smile of Lord Halvin widening by half a breath. Kaelen had already moved. She saw it from the corner of her eye, the king crossing the cobblestones in 3 long strides, his hand closing on the false attendant's collar, dragging him away, kicking the coals into the stones of the square. The guards closed in around the council. Halvin did not smile anymore. 2 of Kaelen's household guards laid hands on his elbows, and Halvin did not resist. But the smoke had already climbed. Elowen felt it reach the light. She felt the light flicker. She felt the song in her throat catch just for a breath, and in that breath she saw very clearly what was meant to happen next. The smoke would sever the song from the sky, the ritual would collapse, and the girl standing in the middle of it would fall. 14 out of 23, this was how they had died. She did not fall. She understood, in the same breath, what the old records had never understood. The ritual had never needed the brazier. The ritual had never needed the priest. The ritual had never needed the crown. It had only ever needed one thing: a Cloudwalker who would not, in the breath after her song was interrupted, close her mouth. She kept singing. Through the smoke, through the flicker, through the cold metallic hum. She opened her mouth wider, and she pulled the hymn up from a place deeper than her throat, deeper than her lungs, deeper than the cupboard she had crouched in at 10 years old, with her hands pressed over her mouth, and the song came up out of her whole body, and the light bent around the smoke, and the pale ribbons of skylight wound themselves very gently around the thin black thread of Halvin's poison, and they did not destroy it. They absorbed it. The black smoke thinned to gray. The gray thinned to silver. The silver blew away. The song rose. Elowen rose with it. She was told afterward that the light grew so bright above the platform that for the space of 11 heartbeats, no one in the city could see her at all. The square, the palace, the river, all of it bleached into one pale burning, as if the world had paused to listen to a song the sky had been waiting 200 years to hear finished. When the light softened, she was standing on the silver spiral again. Her feet were on the stone. Her white shift was not torn. Her black hair fell down her back. The small silver cloud charm was gleaming so brightly it was hard to look at. Her gray eyes, when she opened them, had gone the pale, quiet gray of the sky after a long rain. She lifted her face. She did not speak yet. She only breathed. The wind fell into her and out of her, and around the platform, and down into the square, and through the streets. Every candle for one heartbeat brightened. Then she turned her head. She looked down. She looked past the priest. She looked past Kaelen, who was standing at the foot of the scaffolding with one hand over his mouth and his eyes full of tears he had not given himself permission to shed. She looked at Halvin, and Halvin, held between two guards in his fine gray wool and his careful face, saw for the first time what a girl with an unsanctioned voice looked like when she had at last been given the only sanction that had ever mattered. The skies. She did not smile. She did not shout. She did not need to. She only descended. She walked down the 33 steps in her bare feet, and the platform behind her was still pouring soft pale light down onto the square, and the storm she had been holding for 3 days above the capital had become, at last, something tame at her heel like a great white hound. She reached the bottom of the steps. Halvin was waiting. She did not walk to him. She stopped at the foot of the last step and let him be brought to her. The two household guards holding Halvin's elbows looked to Kaelen. Kaelen looked to Elowen. Elowen did not take her eyes from the gray wool man at the center of the council knot. "Bring him forward." Her voice was not loud. It carried across the great square the way water carries across a still lake. Every head in the crowd turned. The guards walked Halvin forward. He did not resist. He came across the cobblestones in his immaculate gray wool and stopped 3 paces from her and bowed his head at the exact angle a lord of the council was required, by old protocol, to bow to a confirmed Cloudwalker. He had read the protocol. Of course he had. "My lady, do not call me that." He lifted his head. The careful mask was still in place. "Forgive me. I am at your disposal, Cloudwalker. You tried to kill me." A small silence. The crowd was so quiet she could hear the banners on the palace towers moving in the wind. "I do not know what you mean." She lifted her hand. The wind gathered into her cupped palm the way a trained bird settles onto a glove. The air shimmered. A small silver coin appeared in it, an image of one, turned in the light as if the wind itself were showing it to the crowd. A coin struck with the crest of House Halvin, pressed into an assassin's palm 3 nights ago. The crowd gasped. "I have the coin. I have the knife. I have the brazier you set at the foot of the pillar of silence. I have the powder that was in it, and I have the man who carried it, and I have his testimony given freely an hour ago in the king's own chamber, that he was paid by your steward out of your house's treasury. I have the name of the steward. I have the name of the assassin. I have the name of the priest who agreed to look the other way. I have the names of 3 council members who knew. I have all of it. Halvin, I have been quiet for 3 days while my king's men gathered every thread. I am not quiet now. Halvin did not answer. The mask did not move, but beneath it, his hands had begun to tremble. You tried to persuade a king to humiliate a girl in front of his court, because you understood that a soft omega at the edge of power made you nervous. When the humiliation did not break her, you tried to kill her quietly in her bed. When that did not break her, you tried to kill her publicly on a platform built for her sanctification. 3 attempts. Halvin, 1 right, 1 knife, 1 brazier. You have a great appetite for a man who does not like to be seen. My lady, his voice cracked for the first time. The council acts for the stability of the kingdom. I acted always for the... Name the others. I do not. Name them. Now, here. The 3 council members who knew, the priest, the steward, the captain who handed your coin to the assassin. The kingdom needs to hear you say them. You will speak, and every one of those names will belong, from this day forward, to a man who sold a girl to a poisoner. He did not speak. She did not move. She only stood there in her white shift, barefoot on the cobblestones, the small silver cloud at her throat, and she waited. The wind waited with her. The kingdom waited with her. And Halvin opened his mouth, and the names came out of him. 6 names. He spoke them in a low monotone, as if reading off a ledger. Lord Mares, Lord Tyvin, Lord Ocean, Priest Edric of the Capital Temple, Steward Bren of House Halvin, Captain Fallen of the Second Palace Guard. As each name fell, a different silence fell with it. The 3 council members went very still. Priest Edric's face turned the color of wet paper. The captain lowered his head. Kaelen spoke. Guards, take them, all of them, separately. No 2 in 1 cell, no word passed between them. Each will be tried before the full court. Do it now. The guards moved. Mares tried to run and did not get 3 steps. Tyvin did not resist. Ocean wept into his wool sleeve. Priest Edric allowed himself to be taken with a dignity that suggested he had been expecting this day for a long time. The captain laid down his sword before anyone asked him to. Halvin watched them go. When the last had been led from the square, he turned his head slowly back to Elowen. My lady, what will you do with me? She looked at him a very long time. Halvin, I'm not going to kill you. I'm not going to order your death. I'm not going to order your exile. I'm going to order something else. He waited. You will be stripped of your rank in front of this court. The way you persuaded a king to strip mine, you will walk out of this square as a commoner. You will live out your days in the northern valley of Ashmere, in a small cottage with a thatched roof. You will be given 1 set of plain clothes, 1 bed, 1 hearth. You will work the land. You will draw your own water from the river that runs past the grave of the woman your council ordered, killed 11 years ago. You will be spoken of by no one. You will be visited by no one. You will eat bread baked by the hands of the village my mother tried to save. And every morning, when you walk out to your well, you will look up at the sky, and you will know for the rest of your life that the weather over your head is held in the hand of the girl you tried 3 times to kill. He had gone white to the lips. My lady, that is a long life. I know. It would be a kindness to... I know what would be a kindness. I'm not giving you one, I'm giving you a long life in a quiet place. Because I was given a long silence in a small room, and I would like you to understand, for as many years as you have left, what that is. The sentence is final. Take him. 2 guards took Halvin as they led him past her. He paused only for a breath, and he bent his head, and he said, so low that only she and the wind heard him, you are a better ruler than any man I ever served. She did not answer that. She did not feel triumphant. She felt only very tired, and very quiet, and very sure. When he was gone, she turned. She walked past the priest. She walked past the guards. She walked past Kaelen, and she laid her hand on his arm briefly, the lightest touch, the first public touch between them in the sight of the whole kingdom, and she walked on, toward the long stairs that climbed the palace wall to the great open balcony. She climbed alone. The crowd saw her climb. A low sound rose from them, something like the sound a crowd makes when it understands, collectively, that something has changed that will not be changing back. She reached the balcony. She stepped to the rail. She drew 1 long breath. And she spoke to the kingdom. My name is Elowen Vale. My mother was Miran Vale of Ashmere. She sang rain over a drought-starved valley 11 years ago, and my king's house took her for it. I was 10. I watched from a cupboard. I have been quiet for 11 years. I have polished silver and eaten bread standing up in kitchens. I have been walked past by every one of you who ever visited this court, and not one of you saw me, and I do not hold it against you, because I was trying very hard not to be seen." She paused. The wind moved her hair. "I am not trying anymore." A long silence. "I'm going to speak the names of every Omega who was silenced under the old law. I'm going to speak the laws we will pass so that no girl in this kingdom is ever again stripped of her rank in public without a trial. I'm going to speak the name of a school we will build on the cliffs above this city. For children who have been told their voices are forbidden, I'm going to speak and you're going to listen, and we are going to build a kingdom together in which the sky and the throne and the voice of the smallest Omega in the smallest village agree, for the first time in 200 years, that the three are one thing and not three." She stopped. The wind fell still. She lifted her face to the pale luminous sky. "And now I'm going to ask my king to come and stand beside me. Not behind me, not below me, beside." Behind her. Boots on the stairs. Kaelen Thorne came up onto the balcony. He stopped 2 paces from her. She held out her hand. He crossed the 2 paces. He took it. And in the great square below, as the king laced his fingers between the fingers of a Cloudwalker who had just rewritten the shape of his throne, the entire city knelt. She let them kneel, for 1 breath, for 2, long enough that the sky high above took note. Then she lifted her free hand, and she told them gently to rise. Her coronation was the smallest in the history of the kingdom. She insisted on it. No golden carriage, no 7-day feast. She was crowned on a clear, bright morning in early autumn, in the same hall in which, 4 months earlier, a king had torn the sigil from her throat. She wore not a gown of state, but a simple long dress of undyed northern wool, woven by the women of Ashmere. Her mother's silver cloud hung at her throat. Her feet, in deference to an old custom of her mother's line, were bare. The high priest of the northern temple set the crown on her head. It was not the old queen's crown. It was a thin circle of beaten silver, shaped to look like a ring of thin clouds, made by a village smith in 3 nights. It fit as if it had been waiting for her skull. Kaelen stood beside her, not behind, beside, at her direction. He had refused the title of consort. He was still king. She was now queen. 2 crowns rested on 2 heads at the same height. It was, the court murmured afterward, the first time in living memory that the royal dais had held 2 chairs of equal height instead of 1. Her first act as queen was performed the same afternoon. They did not go to a throne room. She walked with Kaelen and 1 scribe and Tioran through the long corridors to the east wing. She stopped outside a particular door, a small door, the door of a small room with a sloped ceiling. "Open it." Tioran opened it. Inside was the iron bed, the wooden chair, the wash basin chipped at the rim. Her shawl was still folded on the bed. 11 years had lived in that room. She stood in the doorway and looked at it. She did not cry. She had cried enough. She turned to the scribe. "Write." The scribe lifted his pen. "From this day, no Omega in this kingdom shall be stripped of rank in public without a trial. No Omega shall be stripped of rank in private without a trial. No Omega shall be stripped of rank by ceremony, by writ, by whisper, by council proposal, or by royal decree, without a full hearing before a court of their peers, in which they shall have the right to speak in their own defense, to call witnesses of their own choosing, and to be represented by a speaker from their own line. This is the silence law. It shall be signed under the Queen's hand and under the King's hand, and it shall be read aloud in every square of every town on the first day of every month, so that no Omega born into this country shall ever again come of age without knowing, in the bones of her voice, that the voice is hers." The scribe wrote. He had to stop twice to wipe his eyes. Kaelen took the pen first. He signed. His hand did not shake. He passed the pen to Elowen. She signed slowly, carefully, because in all her life, she had signed very few things. The silence law was made. She stepped out of the little room. She did not close the door. She left it standing open. She had ordered, the same morning, that the door was never to be closed again. A page was posted to dust the room each morning. A single candle was to be lit on the washstand each evening. When visitors came to the palace, they would be walked past it, and the guide would say simply, "Here lived the queen, for 11 years, while no one in this palace knew her name." The laws followed over the next weeks, one after another, in a steady, unhurried procession. She did not rush them. Her mother, she understood now, had been a patient woman, patient with drought, patient with rain. Elowen worked at her mother's pace. The second law was the restoration of the Cloudwalker archives. Every book, every parchment, every old song sheet that the 200-year-old purge had ordered, burned, was now ordered found. Tioran, now appointed royal archivist of the restored library, wrote to every temple in the north. Books came out of cellars, scrolls came out of walls. A forgotten songbook, hidden behind a stove in a village a day's ride from Ashmere, arrived at the palace wrapped in a child's blanket. The third law was the pardon. Every Omega, living or dead, who had been punished under the old law was formally pardoned. Their names were cleared. A memorial was commissioned, a long wall of pale stone to be raised at the foot of the palace garden, upon which every recoverable name would be carved. Elowen Vale's name was the first. Elowen carved it herself. She did this early one morning, alone, before anyone in the palace was awake, with a chisel Oren had sharpened for her the night before. She knelt in the wet grass at the foot of the long blank wall, and she cut her mother's name into the stone with her own hands. The letters came out uneven. A tall, thin M, a crooked I, an R that leaned slightly to one side, as if it were listening for something. When she finished, she laid her palm flat against the letters. I was quiet for a long time. I'm not quiet anymore. You would like the kingdom I'm building. I will bring Kaelen to your threshold in the spring. The fourth law was her smallest and her favorite, 2 sentences long. No servant, laborer, or ward of the crown shall be left unspoken to for more than 3 days in any household of this palace. Any member of the royal staff who passes another in a corridor without greeting them by name shall be brought before the master of the household for correction. The court laughed when they first heard it. Elowen did not laugh. She signed it anyway. Within a month, the corridors of the palace were louder than they had been in 200 years. The cooks knew the names of every scullery maid. The head butler knew the names of every page. A small, dark-haired girl who polished silver in the east wing had been invited by the queen herself to come and have tea in the rose garden, and had come and had been seen and had wept. On the day the silence law was read aloud for the first time in every town square of the kingdom, Elowen was not in the capital. She had ridden north at last, with Kaelen, with Oren. No banners, no guard beyond 2 riders and a pack horse. They reached Ashmere at dusk. The cottage still stood. It had been bought back quietly by the kingdom the month after her coronation and left empty for her. The thatch had been repaired. The ivy at the windows had been let grow. The doors still creaked. She had loved the creak of that door more than any sound in the world. She did not go in. She sat on the low stone at the threshold, in the long blue shawl she had taken to wearing again her mother's color, and Kaelen knelt beside her on the wet grass. His head bowed, he did not speak. Oren stood a little apart, looking down the muddy road at the bend where a blue-shawled woman had once turned her head one last time. Elowen closed her eyes. Mother, I have brought him. He has come to kneel. He will stay on his knee as long as you wish him to. If you wish him never to rise again, I will leave him here, and I will go back to the capital alone, and I will rule without him, and I will love only your memory for the rest of my life. I'm asking you, what do you want me to do? The wind moved very gently through the ivy at the cottage window. A single small rain light, warm, unseasonable, began to fall. It fell on her. It fell on Kaelen's bowed head. It fell on the wet grass and the thatch. It was the gentle rain her mother had called down 11 years ago. Elowen lifted her face to it. She smiled, for the first time in weeks. Rise. Kaelen rose. She held out her hand. He took it. They walked together into the cottage where she had been born. Spring came late to the capital that year. The winter had been long and quiet, full of slow work. Laws had been drafted and signed. The memorial wall at the foot of the garden had grown, name by name, until it reached the second fountain. The east wing had been opened, room by room, and every ward of the crown who had been forgotten in it had been found, named, and given a seat at the common table. The archives had swelled. The Cloudwalker songs, once forbidden, were being taught carefully to 3 quiet students at the Temple of the North. And the king had learned how to wait. Elowen watched him learn. She watched him through the long winter, across a dozen council tables and 100 shared suppers. She watched him bring her tea without being asked. She watched him rise when she entered a room and remain standing until she had chosen where to sit. She watched him not reach for her hand at dinners, though she could feel, Every time the small, warm second heart under his ribs reached for hers, she watched him one morning in deep winter, kneel in the snow at the foot of the memorial wall and lay a single northern lily at the base of her mother's name, and walk away before she saw him, and never mention it. By the first true morning of spring, she had made up her mind. She found him in the rose garden. He had taken to walking there in the early hours this morning. She came down on purpose. She wore a plain dress of pale green wool. Her hair was loose. The silver cloud was at her throat. Her feet, as they had been on the day of her coronation, were bare. He was standing by the single old red rose in the sunken corner of the garden. The rose was blooming. It had been blooming every morning since the day she had hummed to it before anything had happened. Some gifts apparently did not withdraw. He turned when he heard her. His gray eyes widened, not at her presence, but at the look on her face. He had learned to read her the way a man learns to read weather. He took a careful breath and let it out. "Good morning, my queen." "Good morning, Kaelen. Is something wrong?" "No." "Is something right?" She almost smiled. "Perhaps." She walked to him. She stopped a single pace away, the closest she had stood to him, willingly, in 4 months outside a public ceremony. She could see the small line of gray that had come into his hair at the left temple. "I have been thinking." "Yes?" "About thresholds." He went very still. "I have been a woman asked to cross a great many thresholds in the last year. The threshold of the great hall on the night of the ceremony, the threshold of the cliff, the threshold of the flooded valley, the threshold of the platform, the threshold of my mother's cottage. Every one of them was frightening. Every one of them I crossed. Yes. There is one I have not." He did not speak. "I will not cross it if you ask me to. I will cross it only if I ask myself to. I have asked myself, Kaelen, for a long time. Through the winter, in every room where I watched you not reach for me, in every hallway where I watched you step aside, in every small and patient thing you have done that has made it possible for a woman who once crouched in a cupboard to stand, now in a garden, and speak aloud to a king about a threshold." He had gone very pale. "Elowen, I have not finished. I would like in the coming years to walk beside you, not as your consort, not as your subject, as the thing the old Cloudwalker books called Skymate, the name of the bond between a voice and the one who agreed, with his whole life, to listen. I would like you to know that I do not need this bond to rule. I have a throne of my own now. I have a kingdom of my own voice. If you said no to me today, I would still be queen and I would still be well. I am not asking from a hollow. I am asking from a full cup." A long silence. "You are asking if I would walk beside you?" "Yes." "For how long?" "For as long as you do not flinch from my voice. Then forever." She drew in a small breath. "There is one condition." "Name it." "You do not kneel to me, ever. Not in public, not in private, not in a garden at dawn, not on a threshold in Ashmere. I had a lifetime of being knelt past. Kaelen, I will not spend the second half of my life being knelt to. You will walk beside me. You will meet my eye. You will disagree with me. When you disagree, you will tell me when my anger is wrong, and you will tell me when my fear is lying to me. And you will tell me sometimes to go to sleep, because I will otherwise not. That is the bond I want." "Yes, Elowen." "Say it all the way." "I will not kneel to you. I will walk beside you. I will meet your eye. I will disagree with you when I disagree. I will tell you when your anger is wrong. I will tell you when your fear is lying to you. I will tell you sometimes to go to sleep, for as long as I live, forever." "Good." She reached up. She took his face in both her hands. She did not kiss him first. She pressed her forehead to his. She closed her eyes. She felt his breath shaking, finally permitted on her mouth. She felt the small, warm second heart under his ribs beat, at last in openly acknowledged time with hers. She felt the silver cloud at her throat warm to the touch, as if her mother somewhere had nodded. Then she kissed him. It was not a long kiss. It was not a dramatic kiss. It was a single, careful, chosen kiss, the kiss of a woman who had been given the right for the first time in her life to choose the hour and the shape of her own yes. His hands at his sides rose slowly in the way he had learned and settled at her waist and did not tighten. The rose at the corner of the garden unfurled a second bloom. A light, unseasonable rain began to fall. It fell on the garden. It fell on the memorial wall, on her mother's crooked letters, on the little silver cloud at her throat. It was soft, it was warm, it was hers. When she stepped back, Kaelen lifted one hand and asked with his eyes if he might. She nodded. He laid his palm against the side of her face. He did not speak. Oren had appeared at the far end of the path, leaning on his cane. He was not smiling exactly. His old Riverstone eyes were very bright. He lifted his hand, a small, steady gesture, and he touched 2 fingers to his own chest, and he inclined his head once to Elowen. Elowen inclined her head back. She did not call him over. This was not a moment for witnesses. But when they walked back up the garden path together a little later, Oren was gone, and a single fresh northern lily had been laid at the foot of the memorial wall at the base of her mother's name, where no one had been a moment before. They were married a month later. The ceremony was the smallest of its kind in the history of the kingdom. It was held in the sunken rose garden, not in the great hall. The priest was the same old man of the northern temple. The witnesses were Oren, Tioren, the widow from the barn, the innkeeper from the valley, the boy whose sister Elowen had carried out of the flood, and the old woman who had touched the hem of her white shift on the day of the ritual. There was no crown exchanged. There was only at the end a single vow. I will walk beside you, and I will not flinch from your voice. I will walk beside you, and I will never again be silent. The soft rain fell on them. The old red rose bloomed a 3rd time. And somewhere far to the north, in a small cottage beside a muddy road, an old man who had been a lord, now a commoner, now a farmer, looked up at the gentle spring rain falling on the thatch of his roof, and understood with a clarity that would not leave him for the rest of his long, quiet life what a queen with a voice could do with the weather. 7 years later, on a bright autumn morning, Elowen Vale stood on the cliffs above the capital with a pair of silver shears in her hand. Behind her rose the new building. Not a palace, not a temple, something in between and gentler than either. Long, pale walls of northern stone, wide windows thrown open to the sea wind, a great bronze bell at the gate, cast in the shape of a folded cloud. Above the entrance, carved in the old tongue and in the common one, so every child in the kingdom could read it, the Academy of Quiet Voices. Below her, at the foot of the steps, waited the children, 63 of them, her first class, girls and boys, omegas and alphas and betas, a thin girl from the southern marshes who could call fog, a small boy from the eastern hills who could speak to bees, a pair of twins from Ashmere cousins of her mother's line who hummed harmony without knowing they were doing it, a girl with a stammer who had been found singing a dying lamb back to health in a barn 3 valleys north. They stood in a careful line. They did not kneel. Elowen had forbidden kneeling at the academy. It was the first rule written into its charter, and the shortest, no student shall kneel to any teacher. Every voice in this house is heard at the height at which it speaks. She walked down the steps to them. Kaelen was at the gate with the ribbon. His hair had gone quite gray at the temples now. He looked. Elowen thought better for it. Beside him stood their daughter, Lyra, 6 years old, very small. Her hair was dark like Elowen's. Her eyes were gray like both of theirs. She had been the quietest child anyone at the palace had ever known. She had not said her first word until she was nearly 3, and when she had finally spoken it, it had been a full sentence, spoken to a sparrow on the window ledge, and the sparrow had tilted its head and answered her in a way no one else had quite heard. Lyra was holding a single northern lily. She had chosen it that morning from the memorial garden. Elowen reached the gate. She did not cut the ribbon yet. She turned first to face the children. My name is Elowen Vale. Some of you know me as the queen. Some of you know me as the woman in the book. I want you to know before anything else is said on this morning that the woman standing in front of you was, for a long time, a girl who was told that her voice was dangerous. I want you to know that she believed it. I want you to know that she crouched in a cupboard once with her hands pressed over her own mouth because a woman she loved very much had whispered to her that she must not sing, and she listened, and she was quiet for 11 years. The children were very still. I want you to know that she was wrong. Not the woman, the girl. 1 year of quiet is enough for any child. After that, the world must be told you exist. The world will not always tell you kindly that you exist. The world will, sometimes, try to tear the sign of you from your throat in a great hall in front of 1,000 watching eyes. That is what was done to me. And I want you to know, this is the part I most want you to know, that after it was done to me, the sky itself came down and put the sign back. Not on my throat, inside my chest, where no one can tear it off again. She smiled. That sign is not in me alone. It is in every one of you. That is why this house was built. Learn the shape of the sign inside your own chest. Practice it aloud. When you leave this house, go out into the kingdom and speak it so loud that no one who ever tries to silence a child again will be able to tell themselves they did not hear. A silence. Then the thin girl from the southern marshes raised her small voice. "My lady, may we ring the bell now?" Elowen laughed. It came out full and warm, the laugh of a woman who had rediscovered what her own laugh sounded like. "Yes, you may." The girl ran to the bronze bell. She pulled the rope. The cloud-shaped bell tolled once a long, low, resonant note that rolled down the cliff, across the capital, over the river, and out to every corner of the kingdom. 62 small voices rose all at once in a ragged, joyful, absolutely unsanctioned cheer. Elowen held out her hand. Lyra came forward. The little girl walked between the rows of children, carrying her northern lily. She reached her mother. She reached up and laid the lily in Elowen's free palm. Then quite deliberately, because Lyra did not do anything that was not quite deliberate, she turned her small face up to the sky, and she hummed 4 notes. The same 4 notes her mother had hummed to a dying rose in a sunken garden 8 years ago, before a storm, before a cliff, before a platform of light. The same 4 notes her grandmother had hummed over a drought-starved valley 11 years before that. Above them, the clear autumn sky shifted. A single small white cloud drifted down from the high blue until it hung no more than 50 paces above Lyra's dark head. The cloud paused. It seemed to bow. Then it lifted a soft, fine rain, no heavier than mist, and laid it, for the space of 3 heartbeats, across the shoulders of every child in the line. They laughed. They tipped their faces up. They opened their hands. They tasted it. Lyra went on humming. Kaelen reached at last for Elowen's hand and found it already reaching for his. Elowen raised the silver shears. She cut the ribbon. The Academy of Quiet Voices was open. The bell rang again, and a 3rd time, and the children poured up the steps and through the doors. The grown-ups at the gate, the widow from the barn, the innkeeper from the valley, the old priest of the north, Tioran with his head full of gray now, the boy whose sister had been carried from the flood, grown now into a tall young man in a cadet's coat, stood in the soft spring light and wept without hiding it. Oren was not there. He had died the winter before, peacefully, in a room in the east wing that had been made warm for him at last, with Elowen's hand in his. He had been 91. His grave stood at the foot of the memorial wall, the only one of a stable hand in a line of queens. She thought of him now. The wind brushed her cheek. She understood, as one understands things that cannot be said aloud, that he had heard the bell anyway. She stood at the top of the academy steps with her husband's hand in hers, and her daughter humming softly at her knee, and she looked out across the kingdom she had been given, and the kingdom she had made. The capital glittered in the autumn light. The river ran clear. The memorial walls stretched long and pale through the palace garden. The east wing was full of voices. The corridors of the palace were loud. The council rebuilt over 7 years. Now equal in omegas and alphas, betas and cloudwalkers, scholars and farmers met at this very moment, in her absence, and no one there was afraid of it. She was not afraid of the storm anymore. She understood finally the storm. She was also, and more importantly, the quiet after it, the soft rain at a threshold, the lullaby in a tap room, the hum over a dying rose, the voice of a small girl humming up to a sky that remembered her. Elowen Vale lifted her face. High above the academy, the clouds drifted peacefully. Her mother's name was carved in a pale wall in a garden 2 miles away. Her daughter's small hand was warm against her knee. Her husband's thumb was moving slowly across the back of her palm. The kingdom below was loud and honest, and hers. She smiled. She was home. Her story has come to an end, but our journey together continues. If you found this story inspiring and meaningful, please like the video to support me. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next empowering stories. And if you have any thoughts about the characters, her journey, or want to share your own story, please comment below. I really look forward to reading and chatting with you.